The laughter you heard on television was real, but so were the tears behind the scenes. Before the world fell in love with Deborah Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond, Patricia Heaton was quietly carrying a weight no one ever saw. Her smile lit up millions of living rooms, yet behind every punchline, she was balancing scripts with secrets, jokes with judgments, and fame with a very private fight for stability. In a world obsessed with perfection, Heaton's reality was full of pressure, sacrifices, and hidden truths, some of which even her fans never suspected. Everyone knew the show for its humor, its sharp writing, and its iconic characters. But almost no one knew how much emotional labor was happening just off camera, or how deeply those roles affected the people playing them. Between rewrites, rehearsals, and real-life problems, what looked like a flawless sitcom was actually a battlefield of unspoken challenges, creative tensions, and personal pain that couldn't be masked by applause. Patricia Heaton's rise to fame wasn't fast or flashy. Before she ever stood in Deborah's kitchen, delivering sarcastic lines and mastering the role of the exasperated wife, she was a working mom trying to survive the brutal rhythms of Hollywood auditions. Her chemistry with Ray Romano in the early screen tests was undeniable. While another actress was initially favored by CBS, Heaton's sharp wit, maternal presence, and no-nonsense delivery made her the perfect fit. What viewers saw on screen wasn't just a performance. It was the real-life tension, heart, and vulnerability that Heaton had been living long before stepping onto the set. But even as she became the face of American motherhood on television, her off-screen life was anything but calm. She was pregnant twice during the show's run, and yet neither pregnancy was written into the story. Instead, producers used clever camera angles, props, and wardrobe choices to hide her growing belly, preserving the illusion of a stable sitcom family. It worked so seamlessly that fans never noticed, but the effort it took behind the scenes was far from easy. The show's commitment to authenticity made every rehearsal intense. Creator Phil Rosenthal and his wife Monica often pulled material directly from their own marital arguments, meaning the actors were asked to relive real emotional conflicts in every episode. These weren't just made-up scenarios. They were real-life fights, real frustrations, real heartaches transformed into scripts. Heaton had to dig into genuine emotion to deliver lines that felt lived in. And the emotional toll was real. She wasn't just acting. She was constantly managing the friction between fiction and reality, making sure her performance stayed grounded even while her personal life was often in chaos. When the cameras weren't rolling, Heaton was juggling motherhood, marriage, and a demanding production schedule that left little room for rest. Bradgarrett, who played Robert Barone, was also facing his own darkness. Behind the loud, lovable Big Brother character, Garrett was privately struggling with alcohol addiction. In the early years of the show, he sometimes performed under the influence, masking his pain with impeccable comedic timing honed from years on the vaudeville stage. No one in the audience would have guessed that his battles extended far beyond his character's awkward charm. It wasn't until he decided to seek sobriety that his performances gained a deeper emotional clarity, a new layer of resilience that reflected the real growth happening behind the scenes. Garrett's path to recovery was tough, but it added depth to his role and redefined his place within the cast. For Heaton, his struggle mirrored some of her own hidden battles, one she hadn't yet shared with the public. As the show found success, cracks began to form beneath the surface. While Ray Romano's paycheck soared, other cast members quietly felt the sting of inequality. Bradgarrett eventually walked out over salary disputes, with Heaton offering her silent support. The issue wasn't just about money. It was about fairness, recognition, and dignity. These financial rifts brought unspoken frustrations into the light, adding strain to relationships that had once been built on laughter and mutual trust. Despite their differences, the cast kept the show moving forward. But the tensions, though largely invisible to fans, left lasting marks. Heaton herself was navigating more than just professional politics. Privately, she had begun to rely on alcohol to cope with the emotional pressure. The long hours, the constant public image to maintain, and the expectations of balancing family life with a full-time television job weighed heavily. And though she never became the center of any tabloid scandal, she later admitted to being a high-functioning alcoholic. Her drinking was quiet, private, controlled, but it was real. And it was slowly eroding the peace she tried so hard to maintain. Her decision to get sober came not with headlines or dramatic interventions but through an honest, deeply personal reckoning. She knew something had to change. She wanted to be fully present for her children, for herself, and for a life that had grown increasingly out of sync with the values she claimed to hold dear. Rooted in a conservative religious upbringing, Heaton's need for clarity and honesty eventually overpowered the temporary escape alcohol provided. Years later, she would share her sobriety publicly. Not for attention, but to break the stigma around addiction in women over 50, a group often overlooked in these conversations. Her vulnerability struck a chord. Her words resonated with women who felt isolated, anxious, or forgotten, proving that even a seemingly perfect television mom could face battles behind the scenes and survive them. Even as Everybody Loves Raymond entered its final seasons, the emotional weight grew heavier. Creative fatigue set in. Tensions over scripts and pay resurfaced. And behind the scenes, Peter Boyle, who played Frank Barone, was quietly battling cancer, a truth kept from the public eye. The cast carried all of it with them, into scenes, into rehearsals, into every line they delivered. For Heaton, it all came to a head during the rehearsal for the final episode. Overcome with emotion, she broke down in tears and lost her voice. The moment captured everything that show had meant to her, not just as an actress, but as a woman who had grown, suffered, and persevered throughout its run. Saying goodbye wasn't just about closing a chapter. It was about leaving behind a part of herself that had become deeply intertwined with Deborah Barone. The characters had become family. The cast, despite all their differences, had weathered storms together. But the end of the show didn't mean the end of the drama. Years later, Heaton faced a lawsuit from a former personal assistant alleging unpaid wages and labor violations. Though the case was minor and eventually settled quietly, it dented the image she had so carefully built, a woman of values, discipline, and moral clarity. It served as a reminder that no public persona is ever complete. Even stars with clean reputations have human flaws and personal missteps. The incident didn't destroy her career, but it complicated the narrative. It added another layer to the woman behind the screen, a layer of contradiction, struggle, and humanity that only deepened the story. She soon returned to television, starring in The Middle, where once again she captured the hearts of viewers by playing a realistic, relatable mother. This time, though, her performance carried the echoes of everything she had lived through. The fame, the fatigue, the silence, the healing. And in 2020, she chose to make her sobriety public. Her revelations weren't filled with drama or tears. They were raw, thoughtful, and honest. She talked about the subtle pull of alcohol, the relief of clear thinking, the challenge of making the decision quietly without spectacle. Her story wasn't designed to shock, it was meant to support, to normalize, to uplift others who might be quietly struggling too. She became a kind of voice for women navigating change later in life. Not glamorous, not tragic. Just real. Behind every laugh track, there was a human heartbeat. Behind every joke, there was effort, exhaustion, and often pain. Patricia Heaton's story isn't just about fame. It's about what it costs, what it demands, and what it teaches. From covering pregnancies with camera tricks to holding back tears in rehearsals, from enduring addiction in silence to finding peace in recovery, she lived a story far richer than any sitcom script. And through it all, she remained committed, not to fame, but to truth. Her legacy doesn't just live in reruns. It lives in the lives she's touched by sharing her flaws, her fights, and her victories. She reminds us that behind every perfect TV family is a complicated, courageous person doing their best to hold everything together. If you were moved by this side of Patricia Heaton you never saw on screen, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's always more behind the curtain, and we'll be here to show you the stories that matter most.